Think back to the very first time you booked a flight using nothing but points. Most of us remember that moment clearly. You might have been sitting at your kitchen table late at night, looking at a screen that showed a total cost of $0 and maybe just a few dollars in taxes. It felt like you had discovered a secret doorway in the financial world. You probably told your friends or your partner about it with a sense of genuine excitement. In that moment, those points represented pure freedom. They were a tool that allowed you to go somewhere you otherwise would not have gone. Or perhaps they allowed you to experience a level of comfort that seemed out of reach. But as time goes on, something usually changes for people who get deep into this hobby. You start out with one credit card and a simple goal, but eventually you find yourself with 10 cards, multiple spreadsheets, and a constant mental load of tracking every single dollar you spend. The problem is that many people reach a point where the effort of earning the points starts to outweigh the joy of spending them. This is the confusion we are going to look at today. We are told that more points always equal more freedom, but for many high-level optimizers, the opposite ends up being true. When you have 200,000 points, you feel rich and excited. When you have 2 million points, you often feel pressured. You feel a strange obligation to find the perfect redemption, so you do not waste the value you worked so hard to accumulate. You might find yourself spending 4 hours researching a flight just to save an extra 5,000 points, even though you already have more points than you could spend in a year. We call this psychological saturation. It is the moment where the abundance of rewards stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like a second job. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the numbers. Imagine you earned 75,000 points from a new card bonus. If you use those points for a trip that would have cost $1,500, you have gained a massive amount of value for very little work. But now imagine you are trying to optimize your everyday spending to get 3 points per dollar instead of 2 points per dollar at the grocery store. If you spend $500 a month on groceries, that extra point per dollar only gives you an extra 500 points. Over a full year, that is 6,000 points, which might be worth about $60. If you spent even 30 minutes a month thinking about which card to use or checking your statements, you are essentially working for $10 an hour. Most people would not take a part-time job that pays $10 an hour, yet we often do it willingly in the name of optimization. By the end of this discussion, you should understand that reward programs are designed to keep you in this state of constant management. We are going to look at the hidden ceiling where trying to get more value actually reduces your quality of life. Understanding this trade-off is the only way to make sure your points actually serve you instead of you serving the points. To understand why your rewards might feel less valuable over time, we need to look at the actual math of how banks and airline systems interact. This is not just about your feelings. It is about the systemic design of these programs. Let us start with a basic concept called the marginal utility of a point. In plain language, this means how much extra happiness or value you get from one more point compared to the ones you already have. When you have 0 points and you earn your first 60,000 points, the value is massive. Those points represent your first free flight. But when you have 1 million points and you earn another 60,000, the impact on your life is almost zero. You already have enough for 10 trips. This is where the system starts to work against the individual optimizer. Banks and airlines know that if they keep you focused on the number of points in your account, you will keep spending and opening new cards. They use a system of tiered rewards to encourage this. For example, you might have a card that gives you 1 point per dollar on everything, but then they offer a different card that gives you 4 points per dollar specifically at restaurants. This sounds like a great deal. If you spend $5,000 a year at restaurants, you are moving from 5,000 points to 20,000 points. That is a gain of 15,000 points. If we value those points at 2 cents each, you just made $300. But here is the systemic trap. To get that extra $300, you have now introduced a new layer of management into your life. You have to remember which card to pull out at which store, you have to manage a second billing cycle, you have to monitor a second rewards portal. When you do this across 5 or 10 different categories, you are essentially managing a small business for a very small profit margin. Let us look at the actual numbers of a high-level system. A typical super optimizer might manage 12 different credit cards to ensure they never earn less than 3 points per dollar on any purchase. If that person spends $50,000 a year on their cards, they might earn 150,000 points. At a valuation of 2 cents per point, that is $3,000 in travel value. A person who uses just one simple 2% cashback card for everything would earn $1,000 on that same $50,000 of spending. The optimizer has gained an extra $2,000. That sounds like a lot of money, but we have to account for the time and the systemic friction. The optimizer spends an average of 5 hours a month tracking categories, reading blogs about trance, for bonuses, searching for rare award availability, and managing card renewals. That is 60 hours a year. When you divide that $2,000 gain by 60 hours of work, you are looking at $33.33 per hour. For many professionals, this is actually less than their hourly rate at their actual job. Systemically, the banks are winning because they have turned you into a volunteer data analyst for their products. They are paying you in a currency that they control and can devalue at any time. This leads to what we call reward inflation. If an airline decides that a flight now costs 80,000 points instead of 60,000 points, your hourly wage for all that optimization work just dropped instantly. You have no way to protest this change because you do not own the points. You are holding an IOU from a private company that has the right to change the rules whenever they want. This is why the ceiling exists. As you add more cards and more points to your system, the complexity grows at a faster rate than the actual financial return. You are working harder and harder for a smaller and smaller slice of extra value. You should now understand that the bank is not just giving you a gift, they are engaging you in a complex system of labor. When you choose to optimize every transaction, you are choosing to spend your mental energy on a system where the rules are stacked in favor of the house. The goal of the bank is to make the system just complex enough that you stay engaged, but not so simple that you realize how much time you are actually spending to save a few $100s. We have to ask ourselves if the $300 in extra value is worth the mental space it occupies every time we buy a coffee or pay a utility bill. If you are always thinking about the points, you are never truly enjoying the freedom they were supposed to provide in the first place. Let us talk about what actually happens inside your brain when you start flying in business class or staying in 5-star hotels on a regular basis. You might have heard the term hedonic adaptation. In plain language, this just means that humans get used to new levels of comfort very quickly. Think about the first time you sat in a lie-flat seat on a long flight. You probably explored every button, tried out the headphones, and felt a genuine sense of awe that you were crossing the ocean while sleeping on a bed. It was a peak experience. But the problem many point hackers face is that after the third or fourth time, that awe starts to disappear. You no longer feel lucky to be there. Instead, you start to view that seat as the baseline. This creates a very specific kind of psychological pressure in your personal life. If you spend 100,000 points to fly to Europe in business class and it feels amazing, you feel like you made a great investment. But once you are adapted to that level of service, flying in economy feels like a significant loss. You are no longer earning points to get a bonus experience. You are now earning points just to avoid a bad experience. This shift changes your relationship with your money and your time. Let us look at the numbers of this emotional trap. Suppose you want to take your partner to Tokyo. An economy ticket might cost $800 or 60,000 points. A business class ticket might cost $5,000 or 150,000 points. When you are starting out, you see that you are getting over 3 cents of value per point by booking business class. You feel like a genius for saving $4,200. But because you have now set a new baseline for yourself, you feel forced to earn that extra 90,000 points for every single trip you take. If you earn 3 points per dollar on your spending, you have to spend an extra $30,000 just to maintain that same level of comfort you now expect. If you do not have those points, you might even decide not to take the trip at all because the thought of sitting in the back of the plane feels unacceptable. This is the hidden cost of luxury rewards. They create a high-maintenance lifestyle that requires constant feeding. You are now on a treadmill where you have to spend more, track more, and manage more cards just to stay at the same level of satisfaction. Think about your daily habits. You might find yourself going out of your way to shop at a specific grocery store because they take a certain card, or you might delay a necessary purchase because you are waiting for a new sign-up bonus to appear. These small decisions add up to a lot of mental noise. You are constantly calculating the point value of your life. When you go to dinner with friends instead of focusing on the conversation, a part of your brain is wondering if you should offer to put the whole bill on your 4 times points card and have everyone pay you back. You are essentially trading your social presence for a few hundred points. Over a year, this behavior might net you an extra 10,000 points, which is worth maybe $200. You have to ask yourself if $200 is worth the cumulative stress of hundreds of tiny calculations. We also have to consider the anxiety of the points themselves. Unlike cash in a bank account, points are a declining asset. They do not earn interest, and they can be devalued by the airline at any moment. This creates a pressure to spend them, even if you do not really want to go anywhere. You might book a trip just because you have points expiring or because you found a great deal on a seat, not because you actually need a vacation. This is the moment where rewards stop being about freedom and start being about logistics. You are managing an inventory of digital currency that dictates where you go and how you travel. You should now understand that the more you optimize for luxury, the higher your baseline for happiness becomes. This makes it harder to be satisfied with normal experiences and forces you into a cycle of constant earning and tracking. The goal should be to use points to enhance your life, not to create a set of requirements that you struggle to maintain. When you can no longer enjoy a simple trip without a premium lounge or a first-class seat, the points are no longer working for you. You are working for them. Now that we have looked at the math of points and the personal changes in how we feel about luxury, we need to connect these dots to the world around us. We live in a society that values optimization above almost everything else. You see it in fitness tracking, time management apps, and of course, in how we handle our money. The pressure to get the absolute maximum value out of every single dollar is a societal trend that has turned a fun hobby into a source of widespread burnout. Think about the last time you were at a dinner with friends and the check arrived. 10 years ago, someone might have just thrown down a card or split it evenly. Today, there is often a debate about which card gives the best return on dining. This is a small example of how the logic of reward systems has integrated into our social fabric. The confusion for most people is that they think they are competing against the banks to win free travel. But they are actually participating in a larger cultural shift where we feel guilty for leaving any value on the table. This guilt is a powerful driver of behavior. If you know you could be earning 4 points per dollar on your groceries, but you are only earning 1 point per dollar, you feel like you are losing money. Even if the actual difference is only 50 cents a day, the mental weight of that missed opportunity can be significant. This creates a society of high-performance consumers who are constantly monitoring their own efficiency. Let us look at the real numbers of this cultural pressure. Most people spend about 2,000 hours a year at their jobs. If you spend an additional 100 hours a year managing your rewards and travel logistics, you have increased your total work time by 5%. For many people, that 5% represents the difference between feeling relaxed and feeling overwhelmed. When we look at this on a societal scale, we see a massive transfer of human cognitive energy. Millions of people are spending their Sunday evenings looking for flight availability or reading credit card terms and conditions. This is energy that used to be spent on hobbies, family, or community. The trade-off is that we get nicer hotel rooms, but we have less mental room to actually enjoy them. We also have to consider how this behavior affects the travel industry itself. Because so many people are now optimizing for the same high-value redemptions, the supply of those rewards is shrinking. This leads to a frantic environment where you have to book a year in advance or use specialized software just to find a seat. When everyone is an expert, the advantage of being an expert disappears. This is why you might feel like you are running faster just to stay in the same place. You are part of a massive group of people, all chasing the same 5% of premium inventory. This competition changes the nature of travel from a relaxed escape to a successful mission. If you manage to book that first-class seat, you feel like you won. But if you have to settle for a standard room, you feel like you failed. This win or loss mindset is the exact opposite of what leisure is supposed to be. By connecting these ideas, you should now see that your personal stress is not just a personal failing. It is the logical result of a system and a culture that encourages you to treat your free time like a business. The abundance of points and the ease of tracking them has created a ceiling where more information leads to more anxiety. We are collectively spending a massive amount of life force to secure rewards that are becoming harder to use. When we integrate the personal cost of adaptation with the systemic push for efficiency, we see that the goal of the point hacker has shifted. It used to be about getting something for nothing. Now, it is often about spending your peace of mind to maintain a status that the society around you says is important. Understanding this helps you see that you have the choice to stop optimizing at any time. You can decide that a 2% return with zero effort is better than a 3% return that requires constant attention. Once you realize that the pressure is coming from the world around you and not just your own needs, it becomes much easier to set a limit. You can choose to be a less efficient consumer in order to be a more present human being. Let us take a break from the deep math and look at a situation many of us have found ourselves in. Imagine you are sitting on your couch on a Tuesday evening. You have 3 different browser tabs open. One is a seat availability map for an airline you have never flown. One is a transfer bonus calculator. The third is a blog post explaining how to book a specific partner airline using miles from a third country. You have been doing this for 2 hours. Your original goal was just to find a way to get to London for a wedding next summer. But now you are deep in a rabbit hole trying to figure out if you should fly through Qatar just to experience a specific airport lounge. This is the friction cost of points. When you use cash, you just buy the ticket that fits your schedule. When you use points, the logistics often end up dictating your life. The confusion here is that we think these complicated bookings are a fun challenge, but they often turn into a significant drain on our personal time and energy. Let us look at the real-world numbers of a typical complex booking. Suppose you find a flight that costs 100,000 points and $500 in taxes. If you booked it with cash, it would cost $4,000. You feel like you are winning because you are saving $3,500. But to get that deal, you had to spend 10 hours over 3 weeks monitoring alerts and learning the rules of a new program. Then, because the only available seat was on a Wednesday, you had to take 2 extra days off work. If you earn $50 an hour at your job, those 10 hours of research cost you $500 in time. If those 2 extra vacation days were worth $500 each to you, you have now spent $1,500 in personal capital just to secure the flight. Your total cost is now $2,000. You are still saving money, but the margin is much thinner than it looked on the screen. And that does not even count the stress. Think about the phone calls to overseas customer service centers when a partner booking does not show up in the system. You might spend 90 minutes on hold just to confirm a ticket that should have been issued instantly. These are the moments where the hobby stops being a game. We also have to consider the missed opportunities. While you were spending 2 hours researching that one flight, you were not exercising or reading a book or talking to your family. You were acting as a travel agent for yourself, but you were not getting paid a commission. The reason this happens is because points create a sense of scarcity. We feel like we have to find the perfect use for them or we are wasting them. This leads to what I call the high-maintenance vacation. You end up traveling on dates you did not choose, to airports that are out of your way, just because that is where the points worked. One friend of mine once flew from New York to Los Angeles by way of Montreal because it saved him 20,000 points. He spent an extra 7 hours traveling and arrived exhausted. When we did the math, he saved about $200 worth of points. He essentially paid himself less than $30 an hour to sit in airports for a full day. Most of us would not agree to that deal if it was presented as a job, but we do it happily because it feels like we are beating the system. This is a personal finance trap. We are so focused on the out-of-pocket cost that we ignore the lifestyle cost. You should now understand that every minute you spend optimizing is a minute you are not spending on something else. The points should make your travel easier, not more complicated. When you reach a point where you are making major life decisions based on an airline seat map, it is time to step back. The goal is to be a person who travels, not a person who manages points. You can decide that a simple booking is worth more than a perfect one. Sometimes the best way to use your points is to just take the first reasonable flight you see and spend the rest of your evening doing something you actually enjoy. Reclaiming those 10 hours of your life might be the most valuable reward of all. To understand why you feel like you are working a second job managing your credit cards, we have to look at how we got here. Reward programs were not always this complicated. If we go back 40 years, a frequent flyer program was a very simple concept. In the early 1980s, American Airlines launched the first modern program. The goal was basic. If you flew a certain number of miles, they gave you a free flight as a thank you. It was a linear relationship. You fly 5,000 miles, you earn 5,000 points. There were no transfer partners, no spending categories, and no complex spreadsheets. It was a simple loyalty gesture. But over the last 4 decades, the system has evolved into something much more complex. This shift changed everything for the consumer. The confusion most people have today is thinking that these programs are still just about loyalty. They are not. They have become massive financial engines that often generate more profit for airlines than the actual flying does. We have to look at the numbers to see how this transition happened. By the year 2005, banks realized that they could buy points from airlines in bulk. This changed the fundamental math of the industry. Instead of points being a reward for flying, they became a product that banks sold to you. When you see a card that offers 60,000 points as a sign-up bonus, the bank has already paid the airline for those points. They are betting that you will spend enough money on that card to cover the cost of the points plus a significant profit. This led to the explosion of categories. Suddenly, it was not just about how much you spent, but where you spent it. In 2010, you might have been happy with 1 point per dollar. By 2020, the standard shifted to 3, 4, or even 5 points per dollar for specific types of purchases like dining or groceries. This creates a historical trend of increasing complexity. As more people entered the hobby, the airlines had to protect their inventory. They did this by introducing dynamic pricing. In the past, you knew exactly how many points a flight to Hawaii would cost. It was a fixed number. Today, that number can change every hour based on an algorithm. This historical shift from fixed value to variable value is the reason you feel like you can never stop researching. You are trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces are constantly changing shape. This evolution also explains the rise of the transfer partner. Instead of one program, you now have a web of interconnected systems. You can earn points with a bank, move them to a hotel program, and then transfer those to an airline in another country. Each step in this process was added over time to keep you engaged in the ecosystem. Every new layer of complexity makes the points more valuable for the banks and more difficult for you to use. When you look back at the history, you see that we have moved from a simple thank you note to a full-time management system. You are now participating in a global market of digital currency that is designed to be just difficult enough that some people will give up and let their points expire. This expiration and breakage is a key part of the financial model. If everyone used every point they earned for maximum value, the system would collapse. The complexity is the feature, not the bug. It is designed to create a gap between the points earned and the points redeemed. By understanding this history, you should now see that the feeling of being overwhelmed is the natural result of 40 years of systemic growth. You are not just using a credit card. You are managing a legacy of financial engineering that has prioritized bank profits over consumer simplicity. Knowing that the system was built to be this way allows you to stop blaming yourself for the effort it takes. You are trying to master a system that was specifically designed to be moving constantly. This historical context shows us that the golden age of simple rewards is over, and we are now in the era of high-intensity optimization. You have to decide if you want to keep up with that evolution or if you want to return to a simpler way of managing your money. The system will continue to get more complex because that is how it stays profitable. Your only defense is to be aware of the historical path we took to get here, so you can set your own boundaries on how much of your life you are willing to give to these programs. Now we need to combine everything we have discussed about history and personal habits to look at the actual mechanical ceiling of this system. We are looking at the math of systemic efficiency. Most people who get into reward optimization believe that as they gain more knowledge, their return on investment will keep going up. They think that if they learn one more trick or open one more card, they will unlock a new level of wealth. But the data shows us a very different reality. There is a specific point where the system essentially breaks even, and we need to look at exactly where that is. Let us use a concrete example of a high-level optimizer. This person earns $100,000 a year and spends $40,000 on credit cards. By using 5 different cards and tracking every category, they manage to earn an average of 3 points per dollar. That results in 120,000 points per year. If they redeem those points for 2 cents each, they have created $2,400 in value. Now compare that to a person who uses one simple card that gives 2% cash back on everything. That second person earns $800 with zero effort. The optimizer has earned an extra $1,600. To get that $1,600, the optimizer spends 4 hours every month managing their strategy. That includes checking for transfer bonuses, reading news about card changes, and searching for award seats that actually fit their schedule. Over a year, that is 48 hours of labor. When you divide $1,600 by 48 hours, the optimizer is being paid $33.33 per hour. If that optimizer is a professional who earns $50 or $60 an hour at their day job, they are literally paying themselves less to manage their points than they are worth on the open market. This is the hidden ceiling. You are essentially taking on a part-time job with a fixed pay rate that does not grow with your expertise. In fact, as the airlines make the points harder to use, your hourly rate actually goes down because it takes you longer to find a good redemption. The system is designed to reward you just enough to keep you playing the game, but it never lets you get ahead of the house in a significant way. You have to consider the opportunity cost of that time. If you took those 48 hours and spent them on a side project, or even just resting, so you could be more productive at your actual job, the financial return would likely be higher, but the system is built on a psychological trick. Because the points feel like free money, we do not value the labor we put into earning them. We treat our time as if it has zero cost. If a bank asked you to come into a branch and file paperwork for 48 hours a year in exchange for $1,600, you would probably say no. But because that paperwork happens on a smartphone while you are sitting on your couch, it feels like a hobby. We also have to integrate the systemic cost of card fees. Many of these high-earning cards come with annual fees of $250 or even $695. To justify those fees, you have to use specific credits for things like ride-sharing or food delivery. Now the system is not just taking your time, it is dictating your spending habits. You are using services you might not have used otherwise just to break even on the card you got to save money. This is a circular loop of management. You are working for the points so you can pay for the card that gives you the points. When you step back and look at the total picture, you realize that the ceiling is much lower than the blogs and influencers suggest. For the vast majority of people, the most efficient path is the one with the least resistance. The extra 1 or 2% you gain from extreme optimization is usually swallowed up by the cost of your own time and the mental load of staying compliant. With the rules of multiple programs, you should now understand that the most valuable thing you can optimize is not your point balance, but your time. The system is a machine designed to extract a specific amount of attention from you in exchange for a specific amount of travel. Once you see the hourly rate you are actually earning, you can decide if that job is worth it. For some, the thrill of the hunt is the reward, and that is fine. But for most, recognizing the ceiling is the first step toward reclaiming their freedom. You can choose to accept a lower reward rate in exchange for a much higher quality of life. The goal is to find the point where the rewards are meaningful, but the management is invisible. We need to look closely at the moment your points balance stops being a source of excitement and starts becoming a source of anxiety. In the beginning, every point you earn feels like a step toward a goal. But as your balance grows into the hundreds of thousands or even millions, the psychology of those points changes. They stop being a reward and they start being an obligation. You might find yourself in a situation where you have 500,000 points sitting in an account, and instead of feeling wealthy, you feel stressed because you have not used them yet. This is the transition from points as freedom to points as a chore. The problem many people face is that they feel a heavy responsibility to get the maximum possible value for every single point they own. This is a personal psychological trap that turns a vacation into a performance review. Let us look at the numbers of this transition. Imagine you have 200,000 points. If you redeem them for $1.50 each, you get $3,000 in value. If you spend 40 hours researching to find a way to get 3 cents per point, you get $6,000 in value. That looks like a $3,000 gain, but that pressure to double your value often leads to what we call travel paralysis. You end up not booking any trip at all because you are afraid of making a mistake. You wait for the perfect chance, for bonus or the perfect seat to open up, and in the meantime, the airline devalues their points by 20%. Suddenly, your 200,000 points are worth less than they were 6 months ago because you were waiting for a perfection that does not exist. This is the cost of the internal optimizer. You are no longer asking if you want to go to Italy. You are asking if Italy is the most efficient use of your points right now. If the answer is no, you might choose a destination you do not even like just because the math works out better. This is a total reversal of how personal finance should work. Money and points are supposed to be tools that help you do what you want, not instructions that tell you what to do. Think about your actual behavior when you travel. When you stay in a hotel that you booked for 80,000 points, do you find yourself critiquing the room based on the cash price? If the room normally costs $1,000, you feel great. If the room normally costs $300, you might feel like you wasted your points. This means your enjoyment of the room is no longer based on the bed or the view, but on a spreadsheet in your head. You are effectively charging yourself an emotional tax for every redemption that is not a home run. We also have to consider the pressure of the expiring reward. When you have an abundance of points, you often feel forced to travel when you would rather stay home. You might book a long weekend trip just to use a certificate that is about to expire. By the time you pay for gas, meals, and pet sitting, you have spent $500 of actual cash to use a free night certificate that was only worth $200. You have allowed the system to trick you into spending real money to save a digital asset. This is where abundance reduces your emotional payoff. When travel becomes an obligation to clear out an inventory of points, it loses the quality of rest. It becomes logistics management. You are moving your body around the world just to balance an account. You should now understand that a high points balance can actually limit your choices instead of expanding them. The more you have, the more you feel you have to protect their value. To break this cycle, you have to be willing to be inefficient. You have to be okay with getting a standard value for your points if it means you get to go where you actually want to go when you want to go there. Reclaiming the ability to use points poorly is actually a high-level psychological win. It means you have regained control over your time and your preferences. The real ceiling is not the number of points you can earn, but the amount of stress you are willing to tolerate to spend them. Once you decide that your peace of mind is worth more than a half cent of extra point value, the points start feeling like freedom again. Let us look at a different way of moving through the world. Imagine someone who has decided to ignore almost all the rules we have discussed. This person uses one single credit card for everything. They do not track categories, they do not read travel blogs, and they do not have any apps for searching award availability. When they want to go on a trip, they simply look at their cashback balance or their simple points total and book whatever flight is most convenient for their schedule. From the perspective of a high-level optimizer, this person is failing. They are leaving thousands of dollars on the table every year. But if we look at their actual life, we see a very different set of numbers. This is the societal contrast of the intentional traveler. By choosing a low-efficiency strategy, this person has reclaimed approximately 100 hours of mental energy every year. If we look at the societal impact of our collective obsession with optimization, we see that it has created a culture where we feel like we are constantly being scammed if we do not get the absolute best deal. This intentional traveler has opted out of that cultural anxiety. Let us look at the math of their simplicity. Suppose this person spends $50,000 a year. On a simple 2% cashback card, they earn $1,000. An optimizer might turn that same spending into $3,000 of travel value. The difference is $2,000, but the intentional traveler has zero annual fees, so they save $600 right there. They also have zero subscription costs for award search tools, which saves another $200. Now the gap is only $1,200. When you account for the fact that the intentional traveler never spends extra money just to use a credit, and never takes an extra day off work to fit a specific award flight, the financial gap almost disappears. Societally, we have been taught that being a smart consumer means being a busy consumer. We are told that if we are not constantly monitoring our options, we are losing. But the intentional traveler understands a concept that the rest of society often ignores, and that is the value of a clear head. When this person goes to a grocery store, they have one thought, which is what they need to buy for dinner. The optimizer has three thoughts, which are what they need for dinner, which card gives 4 times points at this specific store, and whether they should use their mobile wallet to trigger a hidden bonus. Over a lifetime of thousands of transactions, the mental fatigue of the optimizer adds up to a significant societal burden. We are seeing more people experience a form of decision fatigue that spills over into their actual work and their relationships. By looking at the example of the simple traveler, we can see that it is possible to be financially responsible without being obsessed. This person still gets a discount on their life. They just choose to take a smaller discount in exchange for a much larger amount of free time. This approach also changes how they interact with the travel industry. Because they are paying with cash or simple points, they are the customers that airlines and hotels actually want. They get to choose the best flights and the best rooms without waiting for a specific seat to open up in a specific fare bucket. They have more power as a consumer because they are not restricted by the rules of a complex loyalty program. You should now understand that there is a societal path that prioritizes ease over maximum return. When you see someone using a basic card or paying for a flight with cash, they might not be uninformed. They might be making a very high-level decision to value their cognitive space more than a few hundred extra points. This shift in perspective allows you to see that you are not required to participate in the optimization race. You can choose to be the person who takes the simplest path and uses the extra time to actually enjoy the destination. The societal pressure to maximize everything is just a suggestion, not a law. You can decide today that you have enough, and that the simplest reward is the one that allows you to stop thinking about rewards altogether. We have covered a lot of ground today. We have looked at the math of point values, the history of how these programs evolved, and the psychological traps that come with high-level optimization. Now we need to bring all of these pieces together to help you build a practical strategy for your own life. The goal is to find the sweet spot where the rewards provide a real benefit without taking over your mental health. This is the integration of everything we have learned. Think about a person who is planning a vacation. They have 100,000 points and $5,000 in a savings account. The old way of thinking would be to spend dozens of hours trying to find a way to make those points worth 4 cents each. This often leads to frustration because the flights are not available or the dates do not work. The new way of thinking is to view those points simply as a tool to reduce your out-of-pocket costs. The confusion people usually have at this stage is that they feel like they are losing if they do not get the absolute maximum value. But we now understand that your time and your peace of mind have a real dollar value too. If you spend 20 hours to save an extra $500 worth of points, you are paying yourself $25 an hour. For many of you, that is a bad deal. Let us look at a concrete plan to stay below the ceiling of reward saturation. Step 1 is to simplify your earning. You do not need 10 cards. For most people, a 2-card system is the most efficient. Use 1 card for your highest spending category, like groceries or dining, and 1 card for everything else. This captures 80% of the possible value, with only 5% of the effort. Step 2 is to set a target for redemption and stop when you hit it. If you decide that any flight where your points are worth 1.5 cents is a win, then you book it immediately when you see it. You do not spend 3 more days looking for a better deal. You take the win and you move on with your life. Step 3 is to remember the baseline effect we discussed. If you always use points for business class, you will lose the ability to enjoy normal travel. Try to save the big redemptions for truly special occasions like a honeymoon or a milestone birthday. This keeps the experience fresh and prevents the psychological saturation that makes travel feel like an obligation. Why does this work? It works because it recognizes that points are a secondary part of your financial life. They should be a byproduct of your normal spending, not the driver of it. When you stop chasing every single point, you regain the ability to make decisions based on what you actually want to do. You might decide to fly to a smaller city that has no award availability because you actually want to visit that city. You pay with cash and you do not feel guilty about it. That is true financial freedom. You should now understand that the hidden ceiling of reward optimization is a real barrier to happiness. More points do not always mean more freedom. Sometimes, more points just mean more logistics. By choosing to be slightly less efficient with your points, you become much more efficient with your life. You have seen the numbers, and you have seen the trade-offs. The banks and airlines have built a very complex game, but you are not required to play it at the highest level. You can take the easy wins and leave the rest on the table. This approach allows you to enjoy the first-class lounge when it works out. But it also allows you to be perfectly happy in an economy seat because your self-worth is not tied to your point balance. You can go back to that feeling you had with your very first redemption. That feeling of genuine excitement because you used a tool to see more of the world. By setting your own boundaries and valuing your time, you make sure that the points remain a gift and not a second job. You have the information you need to decide where your own ceiling is. I hope this helps you spend less time on spreadsheets and more time actually traveling. Would you like me to help you design a 2-card system that fits your specific monthly spending habits?